Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Exponential Potential. And I am excited to be joined by two absolutely phenomenal females. Especially happy to have you back, Jen, because you've been poorly for a little while. I've missed you like crazy. Although Z did a great job of stepping in, I still missed you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just a little bit of a chesty cough cold thing that sort of knocked me on my bottom for a good week. And I think Thea, we have to really give a wonderful guest here, Thea, that's here today, that's also not feeling 100%.
No, I am
Yeah.
not 100%. People tell me I have a wonderful radio voice. Thank you very much. But the advantage of being a voice coach is that I know how to still find my voice, even when my chest is going, no, 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 no.
Oh, so we are in for a delight in this episode. We're carrying on the theme of divine feminine power, and boy, it's been fun over the last few weeks. We're joined today by Thea May, who's a communication coach, especially for outliers, mavericks, and originals. So that's why we're super excited. Um, in terms of noise, sound production, there may be a few tweaks because we have got a couple of fully people on the phone, but actually we'll do whatever we can. So bear with us. That will not stop the energy and presence today. I can almost guarantee that, as you can see. So fears find themselves drawn towards the leading edge of their world, whether by choice or circumstance, and need new communication tools, ways to rise up to the challenge. And fear is the co-creator of Voice for Life communication process that works with your whole being. Can't wait to dive into that.
Hmm.
Really reframe some of the outdated communication norms into real ethical and soul-led, intentional ways of being and relating, ways of tapping into your power. You've been in spoken communication coaching for over a decade, and you help women to communicate unapologetically as their radiant self. It's like, oh, I love it, I love it, love it, love it. Whether you're, I could pretend I'm an introvert. I'm an extrovert introvert who wears bright pink and still gets shy. But you can be a quiet type, you can be a social butterfly. But sometimes you just need that help finding your flow in speaking and writing, and that's where where your magic really comes to fore. So it's great to see you here, and it's great to have you involved in this topic already.
Well,
Already you've been showing kind of just your radiance, your presence, your ability to tap into all of that.
thank you. Yeah, I really believe in the life force being at the front of how we are being in the world. And it's something that children are exceptional at. Their life force is just right at the front of their eyes. It's in the front of their energy. You know, when they're not having a shy moment, they're just fully in themselves. You look in their eyes and they're shining. And then I want that for adults too. That connection of life force at the front of self, and how that moves through then into speaking and writing.
Sounds really juicy. And I think the children aspect is so true, isn't it? We just become so self-conscious,
Mm.
and watching children play and their energy, they really just don't give a damn, do they? They're just
Mhm.
right in the moment and enjoying every second of it. And that's love, that's wonderful that that's part of, bringing that joy and that inner child back to
Yeah,
adults, because it's there, isn't it?
totally, totally. They're less worried about rejection. They assume they're accepted
Well,
Yeah.
ultimately.
which they are, which we are.
Yeah, 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 totally. But the world doesn't make you feel like that. And
Mhm.
it's all those little knocks that then live in your speaking and writing habits that block your willingness to take the risk of being yourself.
But
Yes,
let's
that's, yeah, feels like a risk, but it shouldn't.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
yeah. Go ahead, Claire.
Let's start to unpack that a little bit more, because sometimes you've described that as communicating from source. What do you really mean by that?
So communicating from source is in many ways quite a loaded word, and people would refer to it or relate to it as being perhaps God or nature or life or the universe, or there's lots of different ways of interpreting the word source. When I use it in my work, I have small s source and big S source, and they are really different in terms of your communication flow and energy. So the small s comes from you. This is your body, your senses, your heart, your mind, your feelings, your experience of you in the moment. And it's a really important thread to how you communicate, for you to be present in your communication. A lot of people are abandoning themselves in how they communicate, and communicating, kind of outsourcing what they think they should say, what's the right thing to say, what's the best thing to say, what's the safest thing to say, and that filtering means that you're no longer filtering through yourself. You've passed your filter out into the room, whoever has the strongest influence over you, and now that is your source. Your source is now the other person. And so that's the abandoning of self in terms of how you communicate. So a lot of my work with my clients is about coming back to themselves as source, a source, and what is it that, how does that show up for you? For example, when I work with my co-creator, we always do a practice called self-gathering every single time we have a call and work together, because we know the value of pulling up, like bringing all our pieces back together, putting the jigsaw of us back in, and that means bringing the distractions back in and kind of letting your soul know that you'll pick them up later, but right now they're not important, because you need all of you for something else, right? And it's a form of meditation, if you like, and a guided meditation. And these self-gathering practices bring you into your body and into your self sensing. So you're back in your own seat. You're like, oh yeah, okay, I'm no longer thinking about it. Quieten down the noise. So that's small s source. And then,
it's like creating space for yourself.
God, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the way I experience it is very what's the word kinesthetically. So I experience it really bodily. There are always sensations in my body, and whereas my co-creator, she senses these things more visually. And a client I was working with last week, for her, she gets pictures, clear pictures, and that's how she senses herself, because that's the way her brain works, and it's different for different people. And it's not there's no rule to this, but it's important for you to know how best you can sense yourself, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
And then the big S, the capitalized S, this is moving through you. So small s is from you, and big S is through you, right? Whether you feel that coming from the universe, from inspiration, from God, from whatever word you use. For me, that's more in that place. It's in that place of, it's kind of coming from somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where. Quantum physicists have some of the answer, but I don't know what that is. And I don't feel like I need to know. I don't need to give it a name. I just know that it's true, and that does happen. I do get these senses of being gifted something, right? And that's source with a big S. It feels like whispers, like flow, like guidance. Yeah. And
so, like, where did that idea just come from?
Right.
Or something comes out of your mouth. It's like, where did that come from?
Yeah. And the serendipity of the chance encounter that changes everything.
Mm.
These are, for me, big S moments. And so your capacity to tune into and receive and communicate with big S flow is, you can't do that until you are in yourself, because there's too much static, like the radio station's tuned out, it needs tuning. Tune the radio station in, get rid of all the static, and then big S, you can actually receive it, right? And big S can move through you in so many different ways. Again, you will experience it in different ways. It always comes to my body as a sensation first, but that might not be the same for you. You know, so it might be memory, it might be a sound thing. You kind of have a sense of sound. Like, yeah, there isn't a way that it doesn't show up. There's just all the ways it does show up. Yeah.
And what's different? So when you communicate from that place of source, whether that's little source, little s or big S, what's different about the communication then that comes from that place of source?
Yeah. So I want to give people a get out of jail free card here. It's really important to not feel like you have to be always doing big S, little s source communication. You don't. The washing up moment, the where should we meet later moment, the what other examples are like just a general chit chat that is just a passing moment in a corridor. It's not that important. It's just like, morning, how are you? Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Okay, boom, off you go. These aren't big S, small s moments, right? They're functional communication. They're the ticking over, the nuts and bolts of just making the social environment work. And that's cool. So the difference about communicating with source is that it's a lifted moment from that, and you would want to use it when you have a problem in the relationship, or there's a tension. So you really need to check in with self before you say your next thing. It's the difference between the instructional, functional kind of nuts and bolts and presencing self and receiving inspiration.
Has a lot more power to it.
It has so much more power to it, and it actually takes more of your awareness, it takes more of your presencing, it takes more of your commitment and intentionality. So I always say to anybody I work with, you don't have to be in small s, big S all the time. Give yourself a break, give yourself a break. You don't have to be in your wonderful, juicy, radiant self every minute of every day. That's exhausting. It's just not, we're not built to be perfect all the time. But knowing how to switch, how to access big S, small s when you need to, that takes practice. It takes practice. And the problem I see a lot is that people are using functional communication for most things. Right? They're not presencing small s, big S flow, not sourcing from themselves or allowing their inspiration to show up. So they end up in a sort of feeling of being quite stuck, not feeling connected to themselves, not feeling inspired or joyful. It's really hard to access radiance. They feel like dishwater. And the same can happen when you're functioning through extreme levels of anxiety and stress. You will default to functional communication. You're basically not there. You're just kind of going like, yeah, yeah, okay, yeah, I understand that's important. It's like you've gone into screensaver mode. Of course you have. Makes sense. You can't access small s, big S unless you are feeling safe in yourself. You have some capacity, some energy, some resource for yourself, right? That's why self-care is actually part of a communication strategy for me. Right?
Yeah. It's because, again, if you're so busy and overwhelmed, there's no space to tap into that source.
No, and you will just default to functional. Of course you would.
Claire, anything you want to add?
What I love about that context setting is that as we introduced the concept of communicating from source, I immediately went to public speaking and kind of large pieces where you have to show up fully present. And yeah, I know that for many of the people I work with, they're really nervous about going on stage. It's one of mankind's biggest fears.
Mm.
But for me, kind of, I can, I've talked with 300 or 400 people and almost abandoned the script. Of course, I'm prepared, but almost abandoned the script in order to be present, to allow the excitement to come through and from within, but also representing other people, representing the work that they do, and representing how exciting that world can be for the audience, and trying to get that across. But you're describing a real spectrum of opportunities to bring that through, and that's I'm really interested in that, because you're right, so many of us are busy, or we're juggling a million tasks, or we're coming, yeah, it's okay, yeah, and we're communicating at a real superficial level so much of the time. So perhaps, can we give maybe a few more examples of everyday opportunities to really just alter relationships or alter those dynamics?
Absolutely. And I love that you bring in the presentation aspect, because people think that that's when they would make the effort, and you're absolutely right. And what I want to introduce is that you can move that through real everyday moments, and it will bring a radiance to your everyday life. Right? It literally will bring that radiance that you get on the stage, that glow, that sort of energy. It's a smaller version of that, because being on stage is a bigger version of yourself. The more people you're speaking to, the bigger your energy needs to be. That's how it works. You scale to meet the size of the audience, but the essence of it is the same. Right? It's the essence of it is the same. And you can tell when someone is showing up in a way that is, they are fully in themselves. They are with the extra, right? The extra, whatever it is, big S extra, right? They're somehow tuned in. And this might be, like I mentioned earlier, that if there's a problem in the relationship, so there's a tension, perhaps the early stages of a possible conflict, it may not be fully blown yet, but there's a tension in some way in the relationship. Don't rely on functional. You need to step it up. You've got to start to tune in, right? You got to start to tune into yourself and presence yourself in this interaction, and presence the other person. You got to shift. You got to switch, and the magic lies in knowing when and how to switch, right, into source and presencing. And I have lots of tools for how to do that in the moment, but also it's a practice. You got to practice the switch, right? And there's lots of low risk moments practicing the switch. Perhaps you're going to bring a little bit of small S vibes to your supermarket interactions that day, because that's a mega low risk interaction practice, right? You're going to go and speak to the person in the post office, but you're going to give them your energy that day, right? Practice in these really low risk moments. Other examples are when you're going to discuss something that's important to you. Don't come without having tuned in to yourself first. Bring yourself with you, and especially if it's something that makes you feel nervous, it feels like a bit of a risk to talk about this thing, you're going to raise an idea you've been thinking about for ages, you're going to finally say the thing, you're feeling mega nervous, right? That nervous energy is all right. It's all right to have some nervous energy, but what you want to do is drop into yourself, become a bit more grounded. You'll still feel a bit nervous, and that's cool, because it's your body's telling you that this is an important moment. This is a more than normal moment, and let it tell you that. It's good that you know that in your body, right? And then by dropping in, you can then show up with a little bit more oomph behind what you're saying, right? And if you want to inspire somebody, if you haven't allowed yourself to be inspired first, you're not going to inspire somebody else. It's as simple as that. And it's a vulnerability. There's a vulnerability to showing how much you like something. What if they poo-poo it?
Yeah.
They go like, that is just not that interesting. It can hurt. It can hurt. So there's a vulnerability to leaning into inspiration and sharing the things that actually excite you, that you really care about, that are important to you, because they're little pieces of your heart. They're little pieces of your heart out in the world. And another place where you would want to, and why you might want to communicate from source, is any sort of creative communication act. So co-creative, what you two are doing together on this podcast is a really wonderful example of big S, small s source communication, right? You're using a combo. You're doing small s and big S at the same time. You might not always do them at the same time, but you might only need small s sometimes. But I find that big S always needs a bit of small s, right? Stacking underneath it.
Yeah, you can't, until you tap into yourself and tune into yourself and ground yourself and feel yourself, you can't tap into, you can't, can you? You can't tap into the big S.
No, it needs little s underneath, underpinning.
What I'm noticing, and I think Claire, you probably are as well, given the theme of the month is about feminine power, divine feminine power, there's a lot of feminine energy around tapping into small s and big S. It feels very gentle. It feels like when you do this, you would come from more of a place of compassion and grace. Would you agree with that, Thea?
I sort of agree, but I want to expand a little bit. So, because softness, yes, and heart-led for sure, empathy driven, definitely, and yet there is this great power to it. There is a you and whose army, fire under your ass, strength that comes through when you are in small s, big S flow, that isn't in functional communication. And so I guess what I'm offering here is that feminine energy isn't all soft, it isn't all pink. And I'm sure you have that concept as well.
Yeah.
And but it's really important to recognize in your communication that this is the seat of your integrity. If you are abandoning self, you cannot have integrity, because you'll always filter your response to the greatest power in the room. And so in some ways, I find that big S and little s actually combine the masculine and the feminine power and the energies of the gifts that they offer. And so yeah, I guess it's got to come from the intuitive and the empathetic and the compassionate first, because that's meeting self. And then I think big S kind of grows out and maybe brings in some of the masculine. It's not something I spend loads of time analyzing, but that's my sense, is that when I'm in big S and small s, my masculine, feminine energies are both really present and quite balanced.
I was thinking more of love. I mean, love is not just feminine energy, but I was thinking the power of love. We know a song about that, don't we? Frankie Goes to Hollywood. But there's so much power behind love and that grace and compassion. And you think of a lot of we use Wonder Woman as an example, and goddess and goddess power. There is such a huge amount of power there. And so when I think of love and coming from that place of heart-led, I do feel that that's quite not feminine as in a female, but feminine energy, because males have feminine energy as well. We all have masculine and feminine energy, don't we?
Yeah.
So that was kind of what I was sort of talking to, if you like.
Thank you for making that distinction. And yeah, I think there is a huge foundation of feminine energy within the source communication. I really do. And the more we communicate from source, the more connected our communication is, and the more empathetic, intuitive, and caring the communication becomes. And
the better the outcome. Sorry, Claire.
Every single time.
But it can be the outcome. But actually, you know, as you're describing that, as I'm feeling that, as I'm leaning into it, you describe this kinesthetic sense and feeling it in your body. I'm feeling excited. I'm feeling quite joyous. I'm feeling here. And, you know, some of that will be feeding off your energy, but actually it also builds back into your energy. So it's quite a joyous, connected space, really showing up.
It's interesting you bring up that the energy exchange is what I'm hearing in what you're saying. And one of the things that happens when you are communicating from source versus functional communication is that you recharge each other. So if we go into slightly polarized and oversimplified introvert extrovert personalities, it's more complicated than that, more nuanced, but if you're more on the introvert side, you'll feel drained by social interactions and need time out, right? But and most of my clients are introverts. Most extroverts don't realize that some communication coaching might be a good idea. Just saying, as an extrovert. But the introverts find that when they communicate from source energy, big S and or small s, there's an energy exchange that happens where you go away feeling more energized. You go away feeling like, that was a great conversation. I feel good after that interaction. Whatever you talked about, you feel good. You feel energized. You feel like somehow recharged. And that's the energy exchange that happens in connected communication with big S, small s. And I think that's a little bit of magic. Don't you?
Yeah.
A little bit of magic. Whereas if you exist in the functional layers all the time, it's tiring. You're just output. You're not actually receiving or entering the exchange.
So for many of our listeners and many of our episodes, we try to get really practical for listeners and try to give them little tips and tricks on how they can, you know, adopt some of these practices. So, you know, have you got any little juicy nuggets you can share?
Absolutely. So there is 3 steps for accessing small s, big S communication. And it is to drop into yourself, hook onto the context, person or theme, and then open out into your speaking or writing, whichever one you're doing. And the reason I have these 3 processes, and you'll notice they're quite embodied language. I'm really getting the sense of each one is an act of commitment, of doing, right? Of presencing in some way. So the dropping in, however you meditate, that's a way for you to drop in. Maybe you do some stretching or some yoga. Maybe you go for a run. That's a way for you to drop in. If you haven't got much time, go for a walk around the block. Or go and sit somewhere quietly and just close your eyes, set a timer for 2 minutes. That can be enough. Dropping in is any way of just letting the busyness drop down. Whack on a guided meditation on one of your apps. Listen to a piece of music. There are so many different ways. I have a practice called self-gathering, like I said, but it's a guided meditation. And if that works for you, great. If you have another way, great. But drop in. And then hooking onto context, person, or theme. So in the way that I work with people, I work with something called attunement. And attunement is, it's like bringing all of your awareness and opening it up and kind of, I almost describe it like you're kind of putting yourself into the water of the thing that you are going to communicate about. You're dropping yourself into the pool. You are immersed, right? No distractions here. You're surrounded by what you want to speak into or write into. And you would do that. I often do it in 2 or 3 minutes. And I choose a prompt, which would be a word, or perhaps it's a quality, something that tangibly represents whatever it is I want to communicate into. And I immerse myself in that. And this immersion is it's more than a meditation. It's actually a kind of re-showing up into, and allowing your senses, your intuition, your images, your memories, your experiences, everything to kind of whoosh around you, and know that you don't have to remember any of it, because you're bringing it into your field of awareness, your pool. You're creating your pool. And so what's beautiful about that is that you don't have to rely on notes, on scripts, on memorizing, because you're immersed, and trust the immersion. The immersion will use your intuition to draw forward what's needed to say and write in that moment to be most relevant, most potent. And so that's attunement. Attunement is it's just so delicious. And the communication that comes through from it, and when you've attuned and you're hooked onto whatever it is you're going to really speak into or write into, is just a different level. It's your best work. And then the last bit, which is to open out into speaking and writing, is the commitment to move your communication towards its destination. Right? So you kind of take the brakes off, you let go, and you say the thing. You commit to speaking and writing what is actually moving through you. Right?
You know, Jen, I think our warm-up routine has just changed forever.
Yeah. No joke. It makes a profound difference.
You can really feel the power of it as you're talking. You feel the energy of it. And as you said, I love that word, potent. It is, as you're describing it, it feels incredibly potent and powerful. And I know when I ground myself, when I'm in that space, it is, and we don't always do it. We forget the importance of doing that. And, you know, sometimes we'll get on a podcast and we'll be so excited. We're like, woo! And we're all like, yeah. And we forget to go, right, okay, ground. And I loved the attunement to really commit to what you're going to say, or what you're going to write, or what you're going to paint or create.
Yes. Yeah.
Isn't it? It's so powerful. Thank you, Thea. That's just incredible. So that sort of leads us on to how that taps into our exponential potential. It kind of, is there anything that you want to add around that topic in terms of the importance and how it helps you tap into your exponential potential?
I mean, in many ways, we've been speaking around. Find that we have already been speaking around that more than I perhaps anticipated, and it's the bringing, like I said, the child at the start of our conversation. You meet a child fully. They are just like, hi, who are you? What are you doing? Why are you doing that? Oh, interesting. Will you play with me? You know, they're just like, bing, hi world, you're my friend. And the exponential potential quality of that is that you are fully in yourself. You are fully immersed in whatever you are doing, speaking, writing, sharing. And it's a life force thing for me. Life force changes your world, right? This is life shaping communication. And I call it life shaping communication because when you communicate in this way, you cannot help but move and change your world to meet with your greatest intentions, because you're showing up intentionally. And stuff changes.
And your thoughts change.
Oh, yeah.
Hugely, don't I? Can feel that in terms of, as you're communicating, you're tapping into that source, little s, big S. So the mind, the sort of the ego and the place in your brain that wants to keep you safe, there's no room for that.
No, God, it just disappears. It's amazing. And when I'm working with clients who have a crippling fear of saying their thing, like literally, like feel gagged when they try to do it. They're just so afraid of speaking their actual thoughts. And this isn't public speaking. This might just be they're so in people pleaser that it's hard for them to even access what they would say. So the idea doesn't even the stuff doesn't even come to the front, but they have a feeling inside that they're somehow not being true to themselves, but they don't know what it would be if they were. So working with that quality, it's amazing to watch somebody come alive and find their through line. And this approach to communication basically goes, it's not about the speaking or writing at all. It's about where are you sourcing it from. And what I found, so I trained to teach actors. That was my training. My training was to teach actors, and then I went into business. This thread will come back around, I promise. And went into business coaching, presentation skills, public speaking, all of that. Quite a performative, output-oriented communication coaching, right? And that's all well and good. But what I noticed in my coaching studio was that when someone dropped in and hooked onto what they were talking about, I actually didn't have to do any voice work. I didn't have to correct or work with their posture in any way. Their breathing just sorted itself out. Their articulation energy was just like on point. Projection, not a problem. Okay? And that struck me as really interesting, right? It wasn't about mechanical issues. It was about presencing issues. Oh. And that's when I turned my whole work on a dime and made it all about presencing and source, connection to source, big S and small s source, and created practices around how to do that, because I realized that I was coming at it from the wrong direction. And so exponential potential is to not get focused on the mechanical bits, but to come into the essence, the river of you, right?
It's an innate ability, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
innate. It's innate within us.
you are. You're already fantastic, but you just got a load of guff in the way because life has buffeted you a bit hard, right? But you came out fantastic, babe. Yeah.
I'm sure many of the audience felt tingles throughout. And what strikes me as well is that as I talk a lot about AI and generative AI, and you can see how much extra writing is coming through in terms of text to voice tools and text to video tools. There'll be a flurry of just a flurry or a slurry, I'm not sure, of content as it comes through. Which actually means that if you are present, if you know how to drop in, you have such an edge.
Yeah, you do.
So compelling when you've got all of that background noise. It's almost like a clear note in that humdrum, really.
Oh God, you're so right. You're so absolutely right. And the difference between when you're trying to create content and you're not dropped in and hooked on, it's like pulling teeth and it's boring. The content's not great. It's kind of functional. And then those moments when you feel the whoosh at your back and you're like, oh, I know what it is I need to say. That content just writes itself. It moves through you, like I said. And those moments, you know, ChatGPT hasn't got a look in when I am dropped in and hooked on. Thank you very much. You'll hear my voice, my energy, my life force will jump from the words into your soul. You will experience me even if you're reading me, and I wrote it 6 months ago. Right?
Yeah. Oh, Jen,
kind of quantum, no? It's kind of quantum.
It kind of is, Jen. I'll let you have the last question because otherwise we're going to be going for hours.
Well, I know that it's more of a describing. You have something to offer the listeners, which is around Ask Thea.
Yeah.
I'd love you to let the listeners, the audience, know what that is and what's in that, and what they can how they can benefit from that. Clicking on that link will be in the all the links for Thea will be in the episode description.
So Ask Thea is something I put together because literally my friends ask me all the time, like, how do I talk about this, or what's the best way to do this, or I've got a job interview, any tips? I get asked these questions all the time, and socially, because people know it's my work, and as well as with clients, of course. So I created something called Ask Thea, and it's a form on my website, and you can go in and give me your communication challenge or need that you have. And it's created for I just need a tip for this, right? And so ask me, and I might have a resource already. I can just go like, I'll check this out, it's going to be so helpful for you right now. Or I will create a thing, and I put it up on the website, and then I'll send you the link. And yeah, if you have I wish I had a communication coach in my back pocket. Well, you do. It's on my website. So go use it and send me your questions.
Oh my goodness me, that is so valuable, isn't it?
I love answering them. I love it.
So how can people keep track of what you're doing?
The best way to come and hang out with me online is Instagram and LinkedIn. Those are the only two places I show up consistently. Come and find me there. DM me or comment on my posts. I'm going to be putting up a post about the this podcast, of course. And if people comment on that with Exponential, then I'm going to be creating a goddess self-gathering specifically. So the self-gatherings always lean towards whatever the need is, right? And so I'm going to record one that's specifically for tapping into your inner goddess. Hello. And I'll send you the recording of that when you comment on the post.
That sounds fantastic and so juicy. Thank you so much for that, Thea. We really appreciate it.
I'm excited to do it. I've got to say, I can feel it. But interestingly, like I can already feel the self-gathering coming towards me because I'm tuned in, right? I can kind of feel the self-gathering goddess quality nearby. May sound weird to say that, but that's kind of how I sense it. It feels like it's nearby. And I'll go and immerse myself in it and record it, ready to send out to people.
Oh, thank you so much. And listeners, again, another episode that you just want to listen to again. Follow all the juicy nuggets, which is a great way of introducing as well for us that we're going to be producing some shorts that come out of our interviews so that you can get those really juicy nuggets when you need them most, and then immerse as well in some of the longer form content. So we are spreading like crazy, like the dandelion seeds. We are the diaspora across the world of all this yummy goodness that our gorgeous guests bring to us. So look out for those, and do follow Thea online and LinkedIn and on Instagram. The show notes contain all of those really great links. Yeah, thank you. You see, we gave the reason of the cold. You've not sniffed once. Just been
Mate, that is being dropped in and hooked on. Like the stuff just goes away. It's amazing. Whatever the mechanical disruption is, it just drops into the background. It truly is a bit of magic. I always think it's a little bit of magic. Yeah.
We all need magic.
We literally do. We literally do. And we all have magic, hun.
Yeah.
We all have magic.
It's everywhere.
Yeah. We all have it. In everyone. It's our life force.
Thank you so much, Thea. That was fantastic. And I'm sure that, as Claire said, there's so many juicy gems in there. And you'll need to re-listen to this. And, you can watch it on YouTube as well as listen to it on our different audio platforms.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. I've really loved sharing this with you. And I love the goddess theme. I think it wraps around really beautifully the communication energy of source. Like there's such a beautiful fit there. And yeah, I really encourage people to play with it and explore it, and especially find those low risk moments. They're so good for practicing, and it does take practice. And then it becomes habit, and it's just part of the way that you show up in the world, and it will change your life.
Indeed. So for now, see you again. Bye.
Thank you.